Most of the marketing podcasts out there are not honest with you.
You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
It's very difficult for brands to tell the truth. What I hope to share with Catty is the truth.
The marketing industry celebrates the 1%.
We're gonna carry the boats in the law.
Greatness, it's just something we made up.
The big brands in the world have hundreds of millions of dollars.
And I know some of you hate me as well.
We don't have the luxury of these things. Myself and Oliver, we're building startups and we are on a timer.
Memes and Machines is our new podcast. Oliver Yonchev and Catty. Catman, Catty, Cathal. We're back. we're back. Good to see you.
Great to see you, mate. It's been too long.
It has been too long. I think it's probably worth us saying why each of us think there is something. No, it's probably worth us both saying why we think there's a need for another podcast in the world. You know, there are no shortages. Give me your take from what you listen to. Where are some of the gaps, and why are we doing Memes and Machines?
Yeah, I think I'm really passionate about teaching people how to become a better marketer. And there's a lot of content out there which addresses things at a very high level. And I would love to put something out into the world which gives people real kind of practical, actionable advice on how to better navigate the kind of very busy, marketing landscape. And I think we both have very unique perspectives, the pair of us. We work across such a broad range of brands that give us both very unique insights into how to leverage new emerging technology, but also kind of, the evergreen tactics, which will always be relevant and always be useful for people. And so I think the combination of us two is going to be very, very powerful for people who are looking to kind of level up their skill set.
I'm super biased, but I agree. I'm going to go one step further. And I listen to a lot of podcasts. I've been a huge fan of podcast YouTube for well over a decade, right? However, I think when I think about marketing podcasts, they're usually the same format. You bring in a brand, and brands are often limited to what they can say. They have restrictions. It's unlikely that they get to be honest. And I think it's important that marketeers have forums where they can have really honest dialogues. So I suppose my motivation is, through interesting conversation, can we cut through the bullshit? That's, I think, a good mandate for me. And I've always massively respect. For context, we've worked together for 5 years in New York. We're now both involved in sort of complementary industries in many respects. And I've massively always respected the way you think. I actually use you. You don't know this because people don't know what you say about them behind their back, right? But I always say I use you as the archetype example of a modern creative. And the reason I say what sets you apart is two things. Your obsession with the world around you, your understanding of what's happening at any one time against, that's relevant in the world. And I think great creatives, great marketers have to have that. And then also an obsession over the platforms where information, where content, where stories are told, and the technology that enables storytelling. So I think you have an obsession in those two areas, and it lends itself so well to being a modern marketeer. So, I thought I'd share that. A bit of love on a Friday. A little bit of love.
And I think where we're both very similar as well is we're both untrained marketers. So neither of us really come from a background of true marketing. And that has meant that we've had to teach ourselves every single step along the way exactly how this stuff works. And I actually think that's really powerful and really beneficial in a world which is ever changing, is in that we have no built-in biases. We have no built-in beliefs about how marketing works. We just see what's put in front of us and we execute. We are practitioners. We're actually getting our hands dirty with this stuff, and then we see what works. And then that gives us a very kind of unromantic view of what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, I love that point where you just said like practitioner, and again, I probably didn't add that, but the fact that your origins or career started with you running meme pages, right? You were just literally capturing attention on the internet. And I think I think often it's so interesting. I remember when social media was somewhat new, and you would have marketeers, seasoned, real professionals, great reputations. They would talk about social media or Facebook ads not working, and they'd never run a Facebook ad.
Yeah.
They'd never done it in their lives, yet they go, this thing doesn't work. They didn't have a clue. And I think that is such an advantage. And I would say that advantage is often with the young. I think being born out of the internet age in many respects, and this just being part of your day-to-day life, how you operate, how you think, I think gives you so many advantages. And yeah, you've seen people like Gary Vee speak to this really well. Although I would say probably now he's maybe not as cool as he once was. Hard to retain your edge.
Still spits facts there.
He does. I admire anyone who's willing to say the truth
over and over again.
Over and over. Yeah, maybe too much, but I think few people have either the confidence, particularly today, where speaking the truth at scale can get you in trouble.
Yeah. Is it worth us giving some bios, Ollie? Could you give us an introduction to yourself and your career and what has brought you to Memes and Machines? Yeah,
of course. So my background is one of being a creative. I used to be a drummer. Started my career there. Failed indie rocker, may I add. So had a little bit of success, but didn't quite make it onto the big stage like I would have dreamed of. But what I did get through that process is an understanding of a couple of things. Performing, storytelling. Music is a vehicle. I think there's a famous quote that I absolutely love about music. It's the universal language of mankind. And I think that's why it can connect boundaries, borders, etc. So yeah, started in music. I then had a career in radio. It was media. I was doing media sales for a long time for a large media owner. And then we came together at a social media business. So we spent 5 to 6 years. And for me personally, that experience was working with every big brand in the world at scale on a consistent basis. And it was quite a unique time in history because it was a period where CMOs of the world's biggest brands would invite a bunch of what we were, kids, into their office and tell them everything they are doing is wrong. And they would listen. That was quite unique. Never in time in history have young people had a stronger voice than they did in the sort of emergence of social media becoming increasingly important in the world. And then more recently, I launched a marketing and communication company called Flight Story with Stephen Bartlett. And we do a number of things, but at the forefront of what we do is helping organizations explore new opportunities. It's really interesting because I think marketing by large is 80-90% of the tried and tested tactics and channels, but your outlier advantages are always going to exist on the fringe. They're always going to exist where a rule book doesn't exist, where other people aren't creating or spending time. So having a philosophy of experimentation, having a philosophy of trying new things, particularly when you consider how quickly the world moves, I think is somewhat of a superpower and gives lots of organizations advantages. And that's what we try and do. So that's a bit of a whistle stop tour of what I'm doing now. But if I say what I love business. I love business, and I do love psychology. I love understanding how people think. And for me, marketing is the intersection of those two things. Understanding people and understanding how you solve business problems through the lens of connecting with people. So yeah, I think that's my motivation.
Nice.
Cool. Dude, what do you want to talk about today?
Barbie.
You see, you're a hypocrite, right? You're going to trash something. I know you're going to say something like, you're not going to have positive things to say about Barbie, right? I know you long enough. You're not going to go along with the common sort of championing of Barbie's marketing. So I'm going to let you have your piece, but I know you haven't seen the film.
Well, tell me about the movie. Was it a good watch?
I'm going to tell you, right?
Did you dress up in pink?
No, can I tell you, and you'll appreciate the candor. I didn't dress up in pink. I watched the movie. I fell asleep halfway through. This is the honest truth. But it was late and I was tired, not because the movie was... The problem was the movie has an identity crisis. People would speak about it was amazing because it spoke about social issues, or the scene was amazing. A film has to have some redeeming qualities. So you have to have like an amazing acting, an amazing story, amazing visual effects, humorous. And what it did, it was like a 2 on everything. Do you know what I mean? It had an idea. It wasn't a adult film and it wasn't a kids film. So it had an identity crisis. It wasn't particularly funny. It had like little bits that were funny, but it wasn't particularly funny. The acting was the acting. It wasn't great. The story, I suppose some people liked it. I didn't particularly like it. So my reasons for not liking the film, and to be fair to anyone who is a big fan of Barbie, I watched half of it. So maybe it gets really good in the second half. But yeah, that was my take on the film. But what's more interesting for marketeers, the hysteria that surrounded it. Barbie was, I believe, one of the most successful films of all time. Give me a take. Why?
So I think two interesting things happened. Oppenheimer had a big part to play in it. I think launching the same day as Oppenheimer was this very obvious meme for people to attach themselves to. And if you think about most memes, it usually involves some kind of juxtaposition. A lot of the meme formats you see today involves something very light and bright and something very dark and gloomy. It's like somebody serving a meme template, up on a plate for them. And that just really kind of fed into the constant hysteria, the constant narrative. And it's very rare you have two films of that stature launching on the same day. And so that was almost just like that just kind of set the tone.
Was it intentional? Was that intentional, do you think?
No, I think it was accidental and they lent into it very heavily.
Okay.
I think that was just a coincidence. I don't know. Maybe it was. I think what Barbie's marketing team did really interestingly, I tweeted something saying that I don't think you can actually learn anything applicable about marketing by studying Barbie's marketing strategy. That's a bit of hyperbole.
Classic Catty.
Look, if you're going to get engagement these days, you have to have very binary statements. That isn't true. There is some things you can learn. I think the really interesting thing they did, their strategy was very simple, and that was be everywhere, show up everywhere on every single format. Now, a traditional IP owner trying to do something like that would have a complete headache. They would have a nightmare. The number of brand guidelines and rules they will have about how you use your IP in marketing would just make all of that impossible. Barbie clearly heavily relaxed the way that their IP was going to be used to the world and let people kind of go crazy with it. There was just no real cohesion to their marketing. It was just, let's put Barbie in every single place possible. Barbie Xbox 360, a Barbie house on Airbnb. It doesn't really matter what the brand looked like. Let's just put Barbie somewhere. And I think they understood that by kind of relinquishing that protection over their brand, they were making a trade-off there that was going to result in huge exposure. And in today's world, which is just, social moves at a mile a minute, you have 2 or 3 seconds of people's attention. It made a lot of sense. It was hugely beneficial for them. But I think a lot of brands would never do that for sheer kind of protection over their IP, over their brand.
Yeah, it's a really good point because from what I understand, Mattel went proactively to partners that they wanted to partner with. They lowered their licensing fee to make it somewhat of a nominal fee. And then from an approval standpoint, if you ever try and do a partnership with Disney, it's an absolute nightmare. Everything has to be done in an exact way. And you're right. Undoubtedly, they were showing up. I was walking on Shoreditch High Street and there was a popcorn pop-up. I think it was Popcorn and Barbie, random pink, shop giving out gift bags, right? There's no way that was like Barbie approved in the sense of it's gone through a traditional sort of Mattel sign-off process. So I think you're right. And for me, it raises a bigger question about modern marketing. In a world where I think brands are always looking to co-create with their customers, the true measure of success is like, I shout about you online. It's me talking about you. I promote your product. the ability giving people an opportunity to sort of co-create with you is usually a winning strategy. I think Mattel just went further, and it's not something, to your point, we see in organizations that are very IP rich. And you're talking about Barbie. Barbie's success, a lot of people came out and sort of said, well, Barbie spent $150 million. I'm like, sure, that definitely helps in marketing big budgets. They said, 96% awareness. Sure, that massively helps. You've got 60 years of nostalgia. You've got the adversary that was Oppenheimer, the complete antithesis. You've got, pink, vibrant, in your face versus dark, doom, the world is ending, right? So you had that storyline. For me, you're right. I don't think you can learn a ton from marketing, but what I did take away with it is a sense of big ideas mattering in the world.
Yeah.
The idea that unfiltered creativity, where you could just pretty much do anything and show up. And I'm sure that, like, of the hundreds and hundreds of activations that went on, I'm sure maybe like 5 or 6 of them did incredibly well.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest were like just trash, low value, didn't really build much. But the talkability around, because of all these factors conflating, meant, you wanted to participate. I didn't like the film, but I did 3 tweets about Barbie and why I liked it, right? So, and everybody did the same.
There were brands who didn't get official partnerships with Barbie who did their own kind of
anyway.
bootleg Barbie. They couldn't use the logo, but they did like a pink, an all pink outfit post or something like that. So there were brands who, I think for the first time in history, had FOMO over a brand partnership that they would usually be paid for. And now they're trying to get in on the action without having any official partnership. It was kind of unprecedented, the level of hysteria around a brand. And so they succeeded there, I guess.
Didn't get you to watch the film though, did it?
It didn't. I haven't watched Barbie or Oppenheimer yet. I think honestly, I'm trying to buy tickets in New York and everything is sold out. So it's just one of those where the success.
I've seen you get tickets to some very exclusive events. So don't be telling me that you can't get tickets to watch Barbie. If you wanted it, you'd make it happen.
I watched the trailer and I thought this looks terrible. But I have an open mind. I'll give it a go.
Yeah, it was definitely not a great film. I have no reason to hate on it other than it had nothing that it wasn't funny. Terrible acting.
I don't think it was for you.
Yeah, maybe not. You know what I appreciated the most? I like musical theatre. I actually love the staging. Staging and the dance routines were pretty good. And I thought there were a few humorous elements with Ken. That was it. I was like, but it was kind of chuckle. Yeah. Anyway, I think we're a little late to the party to give deep, meaningful Barbie commentary.
Yeah.
However, I do think my big takeaway was creativity matters today. And I think it's going to be the blueprint for big IP owners. I think there will be lessons if you are a Star Wars or if you are, any kind of Avengers, any major franchise. I think they will take something away from this.
100%. And this is now going to be the first in a long line of IP reboots that we're going to have to sit through, which is great. But I do worry for the films that aren't being made as a result. But hey, nothing I can do about that.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about something that I think me and you are going to have we're going to have a different opinion on. Threads. I've seen you showing up online slamming Threads. Your Twitter through and through, or X. Your X through and through. Give me your take on Threads, what you liked, what you didn't, and do you think it's going to succeed or fail?
I think there's a space, a very big space in the world for a text-based social media app, right? I think it's a necessity, and in a world that is clouded by algorithms, the need for real-time text-based social media is massive. And so somebody has a huge opportunity to get that right. I've been a Twitter user, an X user for 12 years now. It's been how I launched my career. I've kind of probably got some emotional connections to it. And since Elon Musk took it over, undoubtedly there have been some changes, and some of them good, some of them bad. I completely see why, if I was Mark Zuckerberg, why now felt like the right time to try and compete with it. And I'm a big believer in Mark Zuckerberg. I think he probably understands and sees the future better than any entrepreneur in the world. And he has built one of the greatest ad products of all time. And so his ability to monetize attention and social media is probably the best in the world. And so I absolutely see why somebody would want to take that opportunity. I don't think he got the Threads launch right at all. I think he misunderstood how social networks like Twitter grow. So do you think the way Twitter started was very kind of grassroots, very small? It basically started as a very small network for tech people who are working in the tech industry. And I think they launched at a tech conference, and they saw the power of Twitter when people started tweeting about the conference, and it appeared on a screen at the conference, and it was this like, oh my God moment, this light bulb moment that real-time micro-blogging was going to be this huge thing in the world. And then you had these like tech users that started out with it. It then kind of expanded to journalists. A few journalists started using it. It was this kind of cool, mysterious app that people were using. It then went a layer further, and celebrities jumped on. So I remember Stephen Fry being the first celebrity in the UK who launched on Twitter. I tweeted him and he tweeted me something back. I've got a DM exchange with Stephen Fry when I had like 200 followers. It felt like this very cool, exclusive, you're in the know club. And like any cool, exclusive in the know club, more and more people want to join. And it has this very kind of organic growth curve. As a result, Twitter over time built up steam, and the early users were able to curate their network. So they spent years curating the right people they want to follow, the right people they want to interact with. That, I think, is how a social network grows. This very kind of slow, organic curation of tech leaders and people who are first movers. What Threads did was they completely threw that playbook out, and they said, here's an existing network you have on Instagram. We're going to export it to a text-based network. Boom, there you go. And so from day one, I went on my Threads feed and I saw Nike, I saw some meme pages, I saw some guy from high school that I hadn't spoken to in 15 years and who bullied me and I didn't really want to know existed anymore. It was just the uncoolest club in the world. It was it was like walking into Revolutions in Wilmslow on a Saturday at 10 p.m. When the brands are there, that's when you know the network has kind of reached its peak and it's kind of on the other side, right? And so to have brands there from day one was just very jarring and very unappealing. And so basically the long and short of what I'm trying to say is the experience was bad. From day one, the Threads experience, the content was kind of all over the place. I wasn't really sure what I was there for. And so I abandoned it within 2 days. And the data really kind of backs that up. You see their DAUs are down significantly. They still have a huge amount of users. And I'll pause and let you kind of argue the other side before I go.
Yeah, I hear you, Catty, but you're wrong. I'm going to tell you why, right? A number of reasons I disagree. So you're right. I do think a social network's origins are built on a really robust foundation. It finds its place in the world. And I think there's a risk between like accelerated mass adoption and hype. Think of Be Real. Something that had existed for some time, found its moment in the world, disappeared. Think Clubhouse. A feature was launched, that was going to be the future of social networks, how we interact, because podcasting's rising, but it was just a feature. And they accelerated quickly and they died, right? So I agree in principle with your methodology about a slow burn, a robust, find its place. All the platforms that win today or are continuing to win had that, whether that was Twitch, Discord, Telegram, Instagram's origins, really clear, Facebook's origins for that matter, TikTok as an export, everything had a place. So I agree with the observation. Why I'm going to tell you it's wrong for Meta. So what Meta don't have is when you're not the cool guy in the room, you're the incumbent, and you have a million things that you can do as the world's biggest holder of social networks. 3 of the top 5 social networks are meta businesses. What you cannot do is you don't have the luxury of time. But what advantages you do have is just distribution. It's the reason that Microsoft often win in any of their endeavors, particularly B2B endeavors, because they have unparalleled distribution of anything. If they introduce anything into their ecosystem across their sales network, their partnership network, their reseller network, their user base, they have critical scale. And I think to launch a new social network today, when we already have too many, we already have a text-based app that many abandoned. I think Twitter has lost more active users than any other social network ever. I think it's had over 1 billion users. I could be wrong. I could be spouting fake news, but I'm regurgitating something I heard from someone else. And it's probably not far off, right? If you think of where Twitter's landed in terms of its 300 million users and stuck around that point. For Threads to show up in the world, they had to do a few things. They first had to make it very easy for larger creators to care. So by making it so easy to migrate your pre-existing following on Instagram across to Threads, I think was the right move. I also think there's a misconception, and you're a bit of an anomaly because your experience with Third Web is like incremental continue. You like go like that, right? Your graph is users continue to build, and you have this foundation. You just keep building and building. I don't think most mass adopted by incumbent platforms have that. They have these huge surges of users. People try it for a little bit. Feedback is provided on platform. You're right. The algorithm was messed up. They were missing some features. The product experience wasn't amazing. They were relying on being anti-Twitter as opposed to pro-Threads. I think that was a big part of the appeal, a safe space. That's what people would say. But I just don't see a world where Meta could show up any other way, considering how many other business priorities they have at any one time. I don't think they can build something from scratch anymore. I actually think they have to go extremely aggressive and they have to go fast. And they pulled the levers as a playbook and used what Microsoft do very well. They use their distribution to do that. And I think the true test of the app's success will happen in the next 12 months. Can they build something that adds value in the world? Can they figure out an algorithm that's actually useful? Because what they currently don't have, and my enthusiasm was like yours. I was very active to try and test and learn. My enthusiasm wavered because I'm not getting the returns, even for, my curiosity. I'm not getting the sort of time returns that I would expect or the value exchange. But what I will say is if they can figure out an unlock for someone like me that has never put any effort into Twitter and doesn't have a Twitter following, if they can give me a platform where my ideas can spread, then I'm all in, and more people will take that. They will take the what's the word? If you can take the ego that we all have and just give me a little bit of fame. TikTok did that so well. Like TikTok's origins were around schools. You could go from zero to hero with a crap piece of content, just a random piece of content, and you got 1 million people look at the thing. If Threads gives us a little bit of that, considering they've made it quite easy and lowered the barrier for pre-existing creators to have a voice in there, I think they could succeed. But
they could, and I don't bet against Mark Zuckerberg. Like I said, I think if there's anybody who can crack this problem, it's him. They just need a reason to exist, and they need a reason to exist over Twitter. And right now they don't have that. So it's a lot of ifs and buts, right? They have to displace people who have spent 10 plus years building audiences on Twitter, building networks on Twitter. They have to give those people a reason to abandon that and move over. And Twitter just rolled out creator revenue distribution. Elon Musk is doing a lot of bad things to the platform. I've seen more people die in the last 2 months on Twitter through videos than I've seen in my life. For some reason, he's put some weird algorithmic thing that I'm seeing horrific videos on my timeline.
So you think extremes are just being
extremes that are really bad, and that's absolutely true. But he's also doing a lot of good things. He's shipping a lot of experiments that are working for people. He's distributing revenue to creators, which is not something we've ever seen by a social platform. Other platforms will follow suit. He's giving people reasons to stay, and by his reporting, Twitter's daily active users are up. I don't know who to believe in these
Yeah.
in this reporting, but I just Threads needs to offer something that Twitter doesn't. I just don't see it yet.
Twitter's ingrained into culture, or X is ingrained into culture. So the base that love it are going to continue to love it. That slow build of your moat that are your users, that you have a place in their lives. You're 100% right. And what I would say for Threads is we have Western bias, right? Twitter has a big place in the UK and in the US, but there are a lot of territories, big territories, where Twitter doesn't even have a role. I'm pretty sure when we did the research, like in Germany, it's not very big. Maybe even the UAE. There's a number of territories. I need to look at the data again to refresh, but there's a lot of places. So, to your point, your starting position is there is a role for a town hall, a text-based, idea-based platform to exist. Meta, considering their distribution and their dominance across a lot of markets, they'd probably be better placed being really selective and where they can emerge. I also think, if you remember when TikTok came to us in the US, this is post Musical.ly, and we had a brief around user acquisition, and it was quite a lucrative brief. I remember speaking to a lot of other agency partners. So every agency in New York got briefed by TikTok for user, and they were paying premiums for driving users to platform. And we would come up with ideas and concepts to be able to do that. What was fascinating, what people didn't realize to win in a key market, they spent billions, not millions. They spent billions promoting the platform. So I think if Threads wants to break the mold, they're going to have to market it like any other person entering a new category, a new market, trying to influence behavioral change. They're going to have to advertise. And it was interesting, you talked about Elon Musk has always been anti-advertising. And suddenly now he's changing his tune in terms of, I'm pretty sure that Tesla never advertised in the traditional sense. They created a brand, and they advertised through the sense of their users and their conferences. They had a different philosophy. I would argue they've always advertised. They just didn't do the traditional things. Yeah, I think that's probably like a debate for another time, right? But it is interesting.
It's an interesting point. TikTok's user acquisition strategy was the most aggressive I've ever seen, and it wasn't just that every agency was being briefed by TikTok. Every agency was winning TikTok. They were working with every single agency in every single capacity: Instagram ads, Facebook ads, Twitter meme pages, influencers. They did everything. I do think that app was new. So you went on TikTok and it was like something you'd never experienced before. So there was that kind of light switch moment. I don't know if Threads has that, but you're right. There is a way to spend a lot of money and grow a huge network. It does work that way.
Yeah, and just on that point, because I think you briefly touched on it, and I've regurgitated when we had a conversation a long time ago around why did TikTok as a product win? So what they did, what other platforms weren't doing at the time, is they made it really easy to cross-share. They were able to permeate the internet with a watermarked video through 2 clicks. That was part of the genius. So they had a couple of geniuses. The For You page is the world's most powerful algorithm that would serve you content and turn zeros to heroes overnight. That was addictive, and you can speak about that side. What didn't get enough talked about was the creative features that exist to create shareability in other environments. Give us some talks of why, because you're now in product marketing. Give us your talk about where marketing and product come together.
Yeah, and I think it's the best advertising you will ever get is from your users. It's the highest kind of trust environment is seeing your friend post about something, right? So TikTok kind of threw out all the rule books when it came to sharing. If you think about most content platforms, they try to keep their content on their platform. They don't want you sharing links to it on other platforms. We want to keep you on this surface area. TikTok put a button that was you can save this video directly to your phone and you can put it anywhere that you want. The share button on TikTok, it's a terrible user interface, but it's just every single sharing option possible. And you've never seen that before in any social network. And they understood that distribution is way more powerful than keeping people on their platform in the short term. And so you had all this content being thrown out over various social networks with a big TikTok watermark next to it, which was just genius. And like I said, when you have your users being your champion, it's way, way, way more effective than if you were the ones to be there saying you should come use this app.
Yeah. Did you guys try something? I remember having a conversation with you with Third Web. So for anyone that isn't aware, Third Web does application, is building internet applications effectively on the blockchain and helping developers, explore Web3 in a really meaningful way. You had like powered by Third Web, right?
Yeah,
Again, that period.
we've toyed with some things. So we have an interesting insight there is one of our kind of features is like copy and pastable components for front ends. What I mean by that is if you're building a website and you need a kind of widget to mint NFTs from, which is what our company provides, you can copy and paste and we'll provide that widget for you. Like very simple. Think about building like a Squarespace site or building like a Wix site, which makes it very easy. And we had a tiny little Third Web logo on the bottom right of that widget. So anybody who used that widget on their site, they'd have a little logo. And then maybe like 3 months later, we looked at our site traffic and we saw, I think number 2 or 3 biggest site driver to Third Web was that tiny little button. And so we were getting more traffic from that. We were, spending hours trying to create content on various social networks. And what was beating all of our efforts was this tiny little logo in every single widget that people were using. Because like I said, it's like you are seeing the product in use. You are using the product yourself. Somebody thinks, I need one of these. I need one of these widgets. How do I get this? They click on this button. It takes them to Third Web.
You know what?
And that was like a real...
Yeah, that speaks to me on so many levels. People don't like to be advertised to. It's why content marketing is so effective. Go a step further from content marketing. Go a step further from an influencer or a creator or a key opinion leader talking about you. Is like having your product in the world, being used and directing people back to your product. Yeah, it's something we come across all the time. I talk a lot, and I use the example when we speak to builders. We speak with some fascinating startups that have great ideas, and they have this misconception around marketing and product that they don't coexist together. The best drivers will always coexist. Marketing is multifaceted. It's every single touch point. It's how you behave. It's how you treat your customers. It's how you treat your employees. All of these contribute to your reputation, your brand. They're all part of the same ecosystem. And for me, I use this example a lot of Clio. So Clio is at the time when we first sort of engaged with them, they were building a financial assistant. They would take, using open banking, they would take an API and get all your financial information and make recommendations in a chatbot interface. They had this one feature that was incredible. And I don't know if it was intentional at the time, but it inadvertently ended up being their fastest driver of users at the lowest cost. They had something called a roast feature, which meant that if you went to like McDonald's 3 times that week, roast meant you would get roast by your app. It would say, hey, stop being a fatty, be more responsible, like that. And people would love that because it spoke to the human. Why does anyone share online? Why do I share online? Anyone. And I say me as a proxy, but people share because they are showing off. People share because they are saying something about their values, their identity, something they believe in. And a lot of Brits share to self-deprecate. And in you roasting yourself, whether good or bad, about your financial habits, it's already part of meme culture, all the things that are surrounding like being skint, or all the things surrounding like spending beyond your means. It's a bit of a badge of honor. It's kind of all of those things. So simply by creating a human sounding feature meant that people were screen grabbing, and they noticed that people were screen grabbing and sharing these online. So that then became their primary marketing strategy, working with meme pages to replicate this at a much lower cost than any other form of media. And over the course of about 2.5 years, they got, they're at about 5 million users now, but they had about 2 million users, 95% of them in the US, a company from the UK, founder from Sheffield. And it all started from a product feature. And similarly to you, I have to assume right at the start of that wasn't their intention. But when you retrospectively look back and they understood they had that ability to pull that lever, they sure as hell pulled it. And it was tremendously successful.
Make your product shareable. That's it, really.
All right, mate. You don't show me up. I went on a rant there, and you just You just gave me the headline, mate. Your product's terrible.
3 words, mate. 3 words is all we needed.
Good stuff. All right, dude. Look, let's conclude this thing. Is there anything else that you think we want to cover? And I've really enjoyed this conversation. This is why I wanted to do this with you. I get a lot out of our conversations. I think
Likewise.
4 times out of 5 we have a similar perspective on the world, but I like, on occasion we don't, and that's healthy and that's good. That's where good ideas are formed, right?
Absolutely.
So Catty, to conclude, I do want to share with you, and I'd love to get your take on this. I want to share probably my favorite ad of the year. I was asked the other week, actually, what advertising have you seen that's great? And I was struggling. People have talked about Barbie. There have been a few other things that I go, oh, that's quite interesting. But a lot of them have been tactics. I haven't seen that piece of creative that connected with me. And until I saw an advert from, I think it's Le Blues. It was an orange ad in France, and it was around the French women's football team. And the ad was genius, because think of what's happening in the world right now. What is everybody talking about? We're talking about AI. In the context of football, we're talking about the sport. In the context of social issues, we're talking about inequalities, and we're talking, a big topic of debate is that the Women's World Cup isn't getting enough attention in comparison to the men's. And that's, up for debate, right? So what did they do? They created, and I really should credit whoever did this, because I thought it was a wonderful ad, but it was basically an advertisement that lent into all our human biases. So imagine you see an ad and it's like dynamic, fast, short. It looks like it's the French football team, the men's French football team, and it's just quick cuts. Do, 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 do. And then suddenly and slowly, you start to reveal that AI is being used to transform the players, and it was actually the French women's team. So you can imagine it touches on so many cultural references. It delivers a really important message. It was the type of thing that many people can connect with, because why do people share? It speaks to your identity, your beliefs. And it was just beautifully done. And this goes against all social content generally. It was like long. I think the video was nearly 3 minutes long. You had to watch it for like a minute and a half before the reveal. But what I got out of that, I suppose, observation was great creative will just transcend formats and tactics, and it will just win, and people can really get behind it. And the secret for me is what we started this conversation when I said why I think you're such a good creative and marketeer, is attaching yourself to something bigger than your story. And if you can do that time and time again in a really compelling, unique, and interesting way, I think that's how you win in marketing today.
Yeah, and I think we always say that the best marketing makes people feel something. I think that ad in particular played on a very unique set of emotions that most advertising never does. And that is kind of embarrassment. So people who watched that advert, they made assumptions that I was watching the men's football team, right? And they had those assumptions ripped out from under them. And what a lot of us felt was like, oh, why did I assume that was the men's football team? Or because I remember there was one point during the ad, I was like, this doesn't quite, I don't remember these goals. Like I was watching, I watch a lot of soccer, so I saw Mbappe score. And
Can we not say soccer, please?
I'm sorry.
Let's use the correct phrasing. I
watch a lot of football, and I saw Mbappe score, and I saw Griezmann score. And I remember thinking, I don't remember seeing these goals, so something's not quite right here. But it looks like the men's team, and so when you have those assumptions ripped out from under you, you feel, oh, why didn't I make that connection? And I think that was a very powerful way for people to go and just kind of question their own biases and question their own, where they place their attention. Like, oh, I don't actually pay attention to the women's team. Why don't I? There's clearly some incredible sportsmanship on play here. So emotion is always very powerful. But if you can actually play on those kind of almost like negative emotions inside us and those negative assumptions and biases we have, that's so powerful. And just like they're emotions that we don't feel voluntarily. We usually have to have somebody pull them out of us. And so I think that's why it really struck a chord with people. And it was probably the most shared advert I've seen on LinkedIn, on Twitter. The distribution was done by people because people were really so desperate to grab someone else and be like, watch this with me.
And can I say what is really impressive? It was all in French and it transcended boundaries. Because your point, because it was anchored to that deep-rooted emotion.
Yep.
It was that that long, hard look in the mirror that we all
Exactly.
should probably have from time to time. And
Yeah.
it was that jarring thing that, you're right, connected with people. Cool. Well, look, dude, love this chat. Yeah, I'm really excited to keep doing this. And we probably should give a bit of context to memes and machines, right? Who this is for.
Yep.
Okay. So from my perspective, this podcast, this YouTube, this content, whatever it ends up being, is really for marketeers. I think it's for technology enthusiasts. I think it's great for founders, anyone building anything, or simply anyone that wants to understand how to get attention online. And I think on a repeated basis, that's the type of thing that I want to challenge. I want to challenge myself to think through new ideas. I want to challenge my own biases. I want to put my ideas under scrutiny with someone I really respect and see if they hold up. Yeah, and I hope you do the same.
Yeah, I think the title Memes and Machines really speaks to my philosophy behind marketing, which is you have to be very good at making memes. And when I say memes, I use it in the loose term of content. I'd say the best content in the world is content. The best marketing in the world is content marketing. It is the best way to share your message organically in 2023. And I think anybody who wants to build a great marketing team should really focus on building a great content team. And then the second piece, machines. Marketing, because we have access to so many huge networks, so many social media platforms, understanding the way that they work and being able to tap into the automated mechanical side of marketing in paid adverts, in reaching people through email sequences, that kind of less sexy, very kind of in the weeds side of marketing is equally as powerful. So when you combine those two and have a great understanding of both how memes work and both how the machines behind marketing work, that's really where you start to see scalable growth in a very considerable way. And so I'm excited to dive into our experiences. We both have very unique touch points in the world of marketing. We both had worked with some of the biggest brands in the world to launch them in the digital landscape. And I think I see this podcast as people who are looking to level up their marketing and they've been in the profession for a while, or people who are exploring marketing as a profession. I'm super passionate about providing a platform for young people who maybe haven't quite broken into the industry yet and want to understand the way it works from two people who have been executioners for a while now. So
I'm still young, dude. You may not consider yourself young. I am 34 years young. Good. Cheers. Awesome, dude.